All right, so today we're diving deep into Roblox Corporation.
RBLX.
RBLX, that's right.
Ticker symbol there for you.
So if you are interested in this stock, you're in the right place. This is what we do here at the Deep Dive.
That's right.
We're going to break it all down for you, give you everything you need to know about Roblox.
Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty of the stock analysis, just to set the stage for anyone who might not be as familiar.
Yeah, and Ivy.
What Roblox does is they basically develop and operate this huge online entertainment platform.
Yeah, it's massive.
It is massive. Think of it like a universe of 3D digital world.
A metaverse.
Yeah, you could call it a metaverse where users can play games and developers have the tools to build those games and experiences.
Yeah, and they've got all sorts of different products and services that feed into this.
Yeah.
So you've got Roblox Studio, which is what the creators use.
Right, for the developer.
Then you have the Roblox client, which that's what the players use to actually access and play the games. They've also got Roblox Education, which is really interesting. They're trying to bring this platform into the classroom.
Yeah, using it as a learning tool.
And then underpinning it all is Roblox Cloud.
Right, that's their infrastructure that powers the whole ecosystem.
So they've been around for a while, actually, founded back in 2004.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah, they've been around headquartered in San Mateo, California.
Silicon Valley.
But they have users all over the world. Truly a global company.
Global reach, absolutely.
So what we are going to do today is look at Roblox stock. We've got a bunch of different sources here. A stock overview, the recent earnings review from Q4 2024, some key insights from the earnings call transcript.
Analyst ratings, some historical financial data.
Looking at leadership, who are the key executives. We've got some insider trading activity.
And recent press releases, so we're really trying to get a full picture here.
A full 360-degree view of this company. And what we're going to do is distill all of that down, give you the need-to-know info about this stock.
Absolutely. We know you're busy. You want the key takeaways without having to wade through all of the data yourself.
Exactly. So let's jump right in, shall we?
Let's do it.
Okay, so starting with recent stock performance, as of March 31st, 2025, Roblox stock was trading at $59.07.
And that actually reflects a little dip from the previous day, down $0.43, or about 0.72%. So a slight decline, but nothing too dramatic.
Yeah, and if we take a step back and look at the bigger picture over the last 52 weeks, the stock is traded within a range of $29.55 up to $75.74.
So that tells you there's been a decent amount of volatility.
Yeah, it's been on a bit of a roller coaster ride, hasn't it?
It has.
So now let's shift gears a little bit and talk about market cap and how the market is valuing this company. So right now, Roblox has a market capitalization of $39.42 billion.
And their enterprise value, which factors in debt and cash, is sitting around $40.51 billion, trailing 12 months. So very close to the market cap there.
And when we look at valuation metrics like the price to earnings ratio, we've got a PE ratio of negative 41.74.
And for those unfamiliar with PE ratio, it basically tells you how much investors are willing to pay for each dollar of a company's earnings. And in this case, the negative PE indicates they're not actually generating profits right now. And then if you look at the forward PE, which is based on expected future earnings, that's also negative at negative 39.64.
So what does that tell us?
That tells us that analysts don't expect them to become profitable in the very near future, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad investment.
Right. It's just something to keep in mind.
Exactly. Now, if you look at revenue instead of earnings, we've got a price-to-sales ratio of 10.94 currently, but the forward PS ratio, based on expected revenue, comes down to 7.49.
Okay, so a significant difference there.
Exactly, and that decrease suggests that they're anticipating very strong revenue growth.
So even though they're not profitable yet, the market seems to be pretty optimistic about their future revenue potential.
That's right. There's definitely a growth story here.
Okay, so now let's talk about their business model and this concept of an economic moat, which is basically like, you know, how defensible is their business?
It's like a competitive advantage, their ability to fend off rivals.
Exactly. And the analysis that we have here gives Roblox a narrow economic moat.
That's right. So it means they have some advantages, but they're not completely unassailable.
Right. They're not invincible.
Exactly. Their main strength really comes from what's called the network effect.
Right. More users, more developers, and then more users. Again, it's kind of a virtuous cycle.
It is a positive feedback loop,
Yeah.
and it's very powerful. The more users they have, the more attractive the platform becomes for developers to create games and experiences, which in turn draws in even more users.
But this analysis points out that the gaming market is incredibly competitive.
It is cutthroat out there.
There are a lot of companies vying for people's attention and their entertainment dollars.
Absolutely. And Roblox is up against some giants in the industry.
So how do they actually stack up?
Well, they're doing a lot of things, right? They've got this huge variety of experiences on the platform.
Yeah, they've really fostered a lot of creativity,
They have, and they're investing heavily in things like AI and developer tools.
which we're going to get into more detail on later.
But the point is, these are not things that are impossible for competitors to replicate or to improve upon.
Right.
So while they're doing well, they need to stay ahead of the curve.
Yeah, innovation is going to be key for them.
Absolutely. And another thing to consider is that they have to keep spending a lot of money on their infrastructure, the Roblox cloud, and on supporting developers through what they call DevX, which is Developer Exchange.
So while these investments are really important for growth, they're also eating into their profits or lack thereof.
Exactly. And that's something investors are watching closely.
Makes sense. So speaking of their financial performance, let's dig into their recent earnings report for Q4 2024. And the big news here is that they actually beat their own guidance.
They did, which is generally a good sign. It suggests they're executing well and maybe even seeing stronger demand than they initially anticipated.
Yeah, shows they're on the right track. So looking at the key metrics for Q4 2024, their revenue came in at $988 million.
That's a 32% increase year over year. So pretty significant growth there.
Yeah, that's really strong.
Bookings, which are a key metric in the gaming industry that represents future revenue from things like in-game purchases and subscriptions, reached $1.362 billion,
Okay.
up 21% year over year. So again, healthy growth.
And what about users? How are they doing on that front?
So their daily active users, or DAUs, jumped to 85.3 million. That's a 19% increase compared to the same period last year. And total engagement on the platform measured in hours hit 18.7 billion hours.
Wow.
That's a 21% jump. So they're seeing more users spending more time on the platform.
Yeah, so definitely signs of a growing and engaged user base.
Absolutely. And there are a couple things that really stand out to me in these numbers. One is the phenomenal growth they're seeing in Japan and India. Both of those regions saw DAU and engagement growth of over 50% year over year.
Wow, so their international expansion is really starting to pay off.
It is. They're clearly gaining traction in new markets.
That's exciting.
And the other thing that I found really interesting is how their user demographics are changing. For a long time, Roblox was seen as a platform primarily for kids.
Yeah, that was their reputation.
But that's no longer the case. More than 61% of their daily active users are now over the age of 13.
Okay, so they're aging up.
They are, and this older segment grew by 26% year over year, so they're attracting older users at a rapid pace.
Yeah, so that could potentially open up new opportunities for them in terms of the types of games and experiences that are offered on the platform.
Right, it broadens their potential market.
So it's all looking very positive in terms of growth, but they're still not profitable, are they?
That's right. They reported a net loss for the fourth quarter of $219.6 million. So while they're growing quickly, their expenses are still exceeding their revenue.
Okay, but I did notice that their free cash flow was positive.
It was, and that's an important point to highlight. Free cash flow is the cash that a company generates after accounting for capital expenditures like investments in property, plant, and equipment.
So it's the money they have left over to reinvest in the business or to return to shareholders.
Exactly. And in Q4 2024, their free cash flow was $120 million, a 54% increase from the previous year. And for the full year 2024, it was even more impressive, more than 5 times higher at $641 million.
Okay, so how do we make sense of that they're generating cash, but they're still reporting a net loss?
It's a good question, and it comes down to the difference between free cash flow and net income or net loss. Free cash flow really focuses on the cash generated from their core operations, while net income, or in this case, net loss, takes into account all of their expenses, including things like research and development marketing and those big payouts they make to developers through DevX.
Right, so the increasing free cash flow is definitely a positive sign. It shows that their core business is becoming more efficient at generating cash, but the net loss indicates that they're still spending heavily to fuel their growth.
Exactly, and that's a common strategy for companies in high growth phases. They're investing in the future, even if it means sacrificing profitability in the short term.
Okay, that makes sense. So what are their expectations for the current year, 2025? The report mentioned a positive outlook.
Yes, they're projecting continued growth for 2025. Specifically, they expect bookings to grow by 20% or more. And for Q1 2025, they're forecasting even stronger growth between 22% and 24.5%.
So they're not slowing down.
Not at all. They're also aiming to improve their profit margins. They're expecting an increase of 300 to 400 basis points, which translates to 3 to 4 percentage points.
All right, and how are they planning to achieve that?
It's going to be a balancing act. Their strategy involves aggressive hiring to support their growth initiatives while simultaneously trying to manage their costs effectively. So they're walking a tightrope there.
Yeah, it sounds challenging.
It is, but they have this big, ambitious goal of capturing 10% of the global gaming content market.
Wow, that's a big goal.
It is, and to get there, they've got a multi-pronged approach.
Lay it on me.
So first, they're focusing on technological innovation with a heavy emphasis on artificial intelligence, which we'll delve into a bit later.
AI is everywhere these days.
It is, and Roblox is embracing it.
Okay, so what else is on the agenda?
They're looking at ways to improve the economic model for developers on their platform, potentially through things like paid access to certain games or experiences and a more favorable revenue split for creators.
So trying to make it even more attractive for developers to be on Roblox.
Exactly.
Oh.
They want to keep those developers happy and productive because they're the ones creating the content that attracts users.
Right, it's all about that ecosystem.
Absolutely. And another key focus is enhancing the overall user experience, making it even more engaging and intuitive.
But polish.
Exactly. And they're also looking to expand their advertising efforts. Beyond just the traditional display ads, we're exploring things like streaming video ads and potentially even user-initiated video ads where users choose to watch an ad in exchange for some kind of in-game reward.
Interesting. So trying to find ways to monetize without being too intrusive.
Right. Finding that balance is key.
And I know they've also launched this affiliate program, which I thought was an interesting move.
It is. It's a way to incentivize users to bring new users onto the platform, both within the Roblox ecosystem and from outside sources.
So tapping into the power of word-of-mouth marketing.
Exactly. Turning their users into advocates.
So they're really pulling out all the stops to reach that ambitious market share goal.
They're going all in.
But with such big plans, there must be some risks involved, right? What could potentially derail their strategy?
Well, there are definitely challenges. One of the biggest ones is maintaining user engagement, particularly as they try to attract and retain older users who might have different entertainment habits than the younger demographic.
Right.
Those older users might have less free time, or they might be more discerning in their choices.
So keeping them hooked is going to be crucial.
Absolutely. And they also need to keep their developer community engaged and prevent burnout because those creators are the lifeblood of the platform.
Yeah. If the developers get disillusioned or move on to other platforms, that could be a big problem.
It could. And then, of course, there's the intense competition we talked about earlier.
Right.
Those established gaming giants have a lot of resources, and they're not going to just cede market share to Roblox without a fight.
They're going to be defending their territory.
Fiercely.
And I know Roblox has this strategy of charging different prices for Robux, depending on how you buy them.
Right. They charge more if you buy Robux directly through their website or through Xbox, as opposed to buying them through the mobile app stores.
Right. But the report mentions that this differential pricing strategy isn't expected to significantly improve their gross profit margins in the first year.
That's right. It's going to take some time for that to really have a noticeable impact.
Okay. And we also have to keep in mind the substantial costs associated with DevX, those developer payouts, and the ongoing capital expenditures needed to keep the platform running smoothly.
Right. All of those costs are essential for growth, but they also weigh on their profitability.
Yeah, so it's a delicate balance.
It is.
So let's shift gears a little bit now and talk about what the analysts are saying about Roblox. What's the overall sentiment, and where do they see the stock price heading?
Well, the report we have here gives a fair value estimate of $55.49.
Okay.
Which is actually slightly below the current market price of $59.07.
So that suggests the stock might be a little bit overvalued at the moment?
That's one interpretation. The general tone from analysts seems to be cautiously optimistic.
Cautiously optimistic. Okay.
They acknowledge the positive Q4 results and the promising outlook for 2025, but they're also mindful of the fact that the company is still losing money and needs to make significant ongoing investments.
So they're not quite ready to go all in just yet.
Right. They're waiting to see how things play out.
And what about the average price target from analysts?
Over the last 6 months, the average price target has been $53.33, which is also below the current trading price.
So again, that suggests some caution.
Right. It suggests that some analysts believe the stock price might need to come down a bit to reflect the company's current fundamentals.
Okay, so definitely a mixed bag of opinions.
It is. We've seen some analysts increase their price targets recently, citing positive trends in user engagement and Robux purchases.
Okay.
But we've also seen others lower their price targets due to concerns about the company's path to profitability or their current valuation.
So there's no clear consensus.
No, it really underscores the uncertainty surrounding Roblox's future performance.
Right. It's a high-growth company with a lot of potential, but there are also a lot of unknowns.
Exactly.
So you mentioned earlier that Roblox is making big investments in artificial intelligence. Can you tell us a little bit more about what they're doing in that area?
Sure, this is a really exciting part of their strategy. They're pouring resources into AI with over 200 AI-powered systems already up and running.
Wow, that's a lot.
They've even open sourced their voice safety model, which is a pretty big deal.
Okay, and what does that do?
It helps them moderate voice chat on the platform to make sure it's safe and appropriate for their users.
So using AI to keep things civil.
Exactly, and they've introduced some really cool features like avatar auto setup.
What is that?
It makes it easier for creators to bring their own 3D models into Roblox as avatars.
Oh, that's cool.
It simplifies the process, and they've also got Roblox Assistant, which is a conversational AI tool within Roblox Studio to help creators build their games and experiences.
So like an AI assistant for developers.
Exactly. And looking ahead, they're planning to roll out text generation capabilities within experiences in Q1 2025.
Okay, so what does that mean?
It means that creators will be able to use AI to generate text within their games for things like dialogue or storytelling.
Oh, that's going to be interesting.
It could really open up new creative possibilities, and they're also developing a foundational 3D model that creators will be able to use within Roblox Studio to build their worlds and characters.
So it's like a starting point for them.
Right, a template that they can then customize and build upon.
So AI is really permeating every aspect of their platform.
It is. It's really at the core of their future strategy, both for empowering creators and for enhancing safety and efficiency.
It's going to be fascinating to see how it all unfolds.
It is.
So we talked a bit about their advertising strategy and their affiliate program earlier, but are there any other ways that they're trying to generate revenue beyond just selling Robux?
Well, those are their main focus areas right now, but they are actively exploring new monetization strategies.
Sure.
They haven't shared any specific details yet, but they've hinted at things like potential partnerships and brand integrations.
So maybe bringing more real-world brands into the Roblox universe.
Exactly, which could be a win-win for both sides. The brands get access to a huge and engaged audience, and Roblox gets another revenue stream.
And they can do it in a way that feels organic to the platform, right?
That's the key. It has to be integrated seamlessly into the user experience.
Right.
They don't want to alienate their users with intrusive or irrelevant advertising.
So finding that sweet spot is going to be important.
It is.
And speaking of key players in the Roblox ecosystem, let's not forget about the developers.
Absolutely. Those creators are the heart and soul of the platform.
They're the ones building the games and experiences that draw users in.
Exactly. And Roblox knows that they need to keep those developers happy and productive.
So they're investing heavily in DevX, right?
They are. In Q4 2024, they spent a record $280 million on DevX.
Wow.
That's a 25% increase year over year. So they're definitely putting their money where their mouth is when it comes to supporting developers.
Yeah, that's a huge investment.
It is, and it shows how much they value their developer community, but it's also a significant expense that needs to be factored into their overall financial picture.
Right.
It's all about finding that balance between rewarding creators and achieving profitability.
So we talked earlier about how Roblox's user base is aging up. What are the implications of that trend?
Well, it's a really interesting development. As more older users join the platform, it could open up new opportunities for monetization and broaden the types of experiences that are popular.
Okay.
We're already seeing more experiences being created specifically for older users, like the NFL Universe, which is a really immersive football experience.
Cool.
And as this trend continues, we could see even more sophisticated and engaging experiences being developed, which could attract even more older users.
So it's a positive feedback loop.
Exactly. The more older users they attract, the more developers will be incentivized to create content for them, which in turn will attract even more older users.
And that could really change the perception of Roblox. Right now, it's still seen by many as a platform primarily for kids.
Right, but that perception is starting to shift as they attract more older users, and as they broaden their content offerings, Roblox could become a more mainstream entertainment platform.
Yeah, that could be huge for them.
It could.
The report also mentioned some interesting points about their working capital and how it affects their financial reporting.
Right, so in Q4 2024, they actually had negative working capital, which means that their current liabilities exceeded their current assets.
Okay.
And they attribute this to the timing of certain transactions related to the holiday season.
So it's like a temporary blip.
Exactly. They expect it to reverse in Q1 2025 as they settle those transactions.
Okay, so nothing to be too concerned about.
Right. It's just something to keep in mind when you're looking at their financial statements.
And lastly, let's touch briefly on their infrastructure and capital expenditures. It seems like they're managing those costs pretty well.
They're spending on trust and safety measures, and overall infrastructure did increase year over year, but it actually decreased from the previous quarter.
Okay, so they're getting more efficient.
Exactly. They're finding ways to scale their platform without those costs increasing at the same rate as their growth.
Which is impressive.
They're attributing this to efficiency gains they've achieved and the impact of their AI-driven modernization efforts. So they're using technology to streamline their operations and reduce costs.
Smart.
Very smart.
And we also saw some recent press releases highlighting all sorts of interesting activities on the platform.
We did everything from brand integrations to new game launches to partnerships and acquisitions. It really shows the breadth and depth of what's happening on Roblox right now.
Yeah, it's a vibrant and dynamic ecosystem.
It is.
So to wrap it all up, what are the key takeaways for someone looking at Roblox stock?
Well, the big picture is this. We've got a company that's experiencing significant growth in users and engagement driven by substantial technological innovation, particularly in AI.
Okay.
They're actively working to expand their monetization strategies, and they have positive expectations for future growth.
So a lot of things to be excited about.
There are, but there are also some things to be cautious about, those ongoing net losses. The intense competition and those hefty expenses related to supporting their developer community. So the current fair value estimate is slightly below the market price, which suggests that investors should monitor their progress toward achieving profitability.
So it's a bit of a wait-and-see situation.
I would say so.
So as we think about Roblox and their ambitious goal to capture a large chunk of the gaming market and their heavy investment in future technologies like AI, it seems like the big question is, how will they balance attracting users, supporting developers, and ultimately becoming profitable?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah. So as you think about this stock, what aspects of their strategy are you going to be keeping a close eye on?
That's something for you to ponder.
If you enjoyed this deep dive into Roblox and found it helpful in understanding the complexities of this stock, we encourage you to subscribe to our channel and hit that bell icon so you don't miss any of our future deep dives.
We appreciate your support.
Thanks for joining us.
See you next time.
Bye.